All right, welcome everyone to the State of Reality AMA. If you're here, you're early. And I am Andrew Sear, and today I've got our team with me. We have Wyatt, founder of Reality, and we have Brian, who runs our operations. We're going to cover what we've been building, where we're headed, and we can open it up to you. You can drop your questions in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. We'll talk about the state of the network. We have had some new innovations that we'd like to talk about, specifically something called Lib P2P. And then we'll also talk about cloud seeding, what that is, venture studios, and the big picture on what's unfolding here at Reality. All right. So we have had a big innovation in terms of how nodes are being run. Currently, most of you know that the way to go about it is that you have to configure your ports and port forwarding, and you'd have to be connected to Wi-Fi. But we recently had a breakthrough around mining over LTE. And I'd like to ask you, Brian, to talk more about it, about what is Lib P2P, why does it matter, how does it work on our network?
Okay, all right. I'll just launch into it. So Lib P2P. So basically, this is a huge innovation. It took a lot of work by the team. And we, a few months ago, identified that the biggest blocker for us was, well, really, there was a number of things. First of all, the port forwarding introduces a lot of friction for people who want to connect. You've got to go into your router dashboard. Router dashboards vary depending upon your ISP. It was tripping people up, and it was probably the hardest technical thing that you had to do to join the network, right? That was very much playing on our minds, and we were trying to figure out how we could bypass that requirement. In my view, we've kind of had to bypass that requirement if we really want mass adoption. Like, the whole purpose of Reality is for it to be easy to run a node. And it is very easy, but this port forwarding step was a bit of a complication. That was, we think, deterring people from joining the network or tripping them up when they tried to join the network. So another thing was this LTE, right? We wanted to enable people to mine over LTE. And this is really important in like Africa and the global south, where fixed wireless internet isn't as prevalent, and with this massive mobile adoption. And so we were thinking about how to make this work, in particular for our partners, BitMobile, who have the Phoenix X. We wanted to enable people to use LTE, mine from their phone, and maybe even pay off their bills with the proceeds of mining. Another issue that we encountered was Starlink. You know, a lot of people have Starlink internet. And a problem with Starlink is that it wasn't working, right? When people tried to spin up a portal and they were using Starlink, it wouldn't work. The final thing was that there are many countries that are behind CGNAT. This is this carrier grade network address translation. It's like an IP address that is a summarized address or a bunch of other like end user IP addresses behind it. And the problem is that when you're connecting from these countries with ISPs that have this CGNAT, the testnet was not able to reach back to your node, to your IP address. It would hit. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, I think Wyatt can't hear me. So I'll just continue. So the issue was they're not being able to, enable a lot of these countries like Kenya, for example, to connect, enabling people in those countries to connect. So with Lib P2P, we address all of these issues in one fell swoop. And essentially what it is it enables us to bypass these blocks in network connectivity and enable you to join the network despite, say, being on Starlink, on LTE, and so on. So it's a very interesting software library that we found, and we've been testing it and implementing it over the last few months. And it's now actually live on testnet. What we're going to do next is a network restart, and we're going to ask people to open more ports in addition to what they have. in order to enable more peers to connect to one another through Lib peer-to-peer. Right, so though we're going to do this restart today or tomorrow, and we'll be asking you to open up to 9003 and 9013, and that's going to enable kind of the full power of Lib P2P to take effect. But we've been testing it. It works, and it's very promising for us, particularly in light of like our focus on Africa and the global South. And yeah, it's very exciting, and we think it was kind of an indispensable step for achieving the mass adoption that we're aiming for.
So, Brian, if I have this right, Lib P2P allows anyone with a mobile phone who's not connected to Wi-Fi to be able to mine. So they could be walking down the street with their phone, mining on RealityNet and earning rewards or tokens for that.
That's right.
And the ask of the community is that if we open those ports, will allow for that peer-to-peer connections to be wider. And so we'll be further at the edge of networks, which gives us far more access to with our partnership in BitMobile and especially in other countries, throughout South America and Africa, where maybe people don't have a steady Wi-Fi connection, but they definitely are interested in mining on the network. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
That's it.
Really good. All right, and just to be clear, this isn't a setting in Portal. It's just the only thing that people would have to do is to open more ports on their own routers.
In Portal, there is a setting for electing Lib P2P, but for now, what we want people to do is just open up those other ports, and that will mean that you are accessible to the nodes that are running on Lib P2P, in particular the Android nodes. So, with our Android app, they'll be able to reach you and connect to more peers on the testnet.
Wow. So it's a pretty powerful update. It's like every mobile phone, which there are billions in the world, can now essentially be an asset where people are sharing the compute that is in their phone and earning for it. That's powerful.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where look, a lot of the, we're infrastructure, and a lot of the things might not be visible, like these big important changes. You might not see any immediate change in the front end, like there's no new button or something to click. But really, we felt that this was kind of pivotal from a strategic point of view to do this work and make these changes under the hood. And it did take a while, but we're really happy to report that it's working. We're going to be improving it even further over the next while, but it already has enabled us to connect. I've tested it out with Starlink. I've tested it out with LTE. So it's a really, I think it's a difference maker in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, me too. Cool. We also have been working on, we also have been updating our website. So if any of you have checked out the website, a lot of the pages have been updated. Some are still undergoing some changes. And we have a new page up that says cloud seeding with the coming soon badge. Brian, do you want to tell or share with our community, maybe drop some alpha here on what is cloud seeding and why it matters?
Yeah, for sure. So Wyatt and I have been talking about this for a long time. And, we really view the Ethereum ICO era as being like a golden era for crypto. You had applications which were able to launch, and investors were able to invest in those applications and get ERC20 tokens in return, right? But ETH became like an investable asset at that point. And in order to participate in those ICOs, you would need to acquire ETH. And so since then, there's been some kind of lesser versions of ICOs, but really the kind of that golden era kind of has dwindled down. We identified this regulatory change that has been taking place in the United States as a signal that this type of thing is possible again. We think that we are at the cusp of a new ICO era. People will be able to invest in utility tokens via a safe harbor in the new legislation that's coming out, and that people basically will be able to do ICOs once again. So the ICOs, as we conceive of them, it's called cloud seeding. Cloud seeding is more sophisticated than the original ICO. It involves in some ways it's similar, but it has various safeguards which are designed to ensure that real applications are being built with real tokens, right? Tokens that serve a real purpose in those applications, and that the tokens are utilized properly by both the parties that are investing, right? They're getting the reality net tokens, like the wrap tokens, in exchange for their investment of net, and the builders are getting net. And so cloud seeding is quite a sophisticated mechanism whereby you can define the allocations of the investments and the distributions of wrap tokens programmatically, so that you can define things like vesting terms, lockup, and the actual budgeting allocation or the invested capital, right? These are things that you don't really have on any other platform, right? Being able to predefine how tokens are going to be spent that are invested, where that net is going. And we think it's pretty innovative, and the timing is really good for this kind of thing. It's true the Clarity Act has stalled at the moment, but we also have been thinking about that whole aspect of things as well. So we can talk more about that bit later.
Yeah, it's really exciting because, being in crypto all these years, just watching the speculation of these types of token launch pads, and we are designing a system where we are taking over the years and seeing all the things that have worked in crypto and like through trial and error and leaving the rest. And essentially it creates it's how projects will launch tokens on reality. So it's less like a launch pad and more of about how all the components that a token would need to go to market with, all the economic incentives at once to launch with, is designed so that when the token goes live, the conditions are already set for it to function. So, and we align incentives at the right time. And we'll talk more about that. I was wondering, Wyatt, if we can talk to you a little bit about, you've seen the ICO era come and go, a lot of promises, a lot of failures. How do you see that what we're doing with cloud seeding is so fundamentally different from that model? And like, what makes a utility token actually useful on this network?
Well, like what's really different about it is that it actually like ties some nominal notion of value of these utility tokens to, people contributing some amount of like resource or like essentially like running like a node on their devices. So I mean, look, I think it really it's an important. There needs to be some sort of store of value for this entire economy to work. Otherwise, it's like in a lot of ways, sort of like propped up in fluff. At the same time, if you look at these kind of like compute marketplace plays out there, I don't really think the tokenomics like totally makes sense just for what their kind of platforms do specifically, and also just in terms of like having some kind of like a stake inside of the total, just some sort of a stake or representation of value behind like the products and like companies that people care about. You know what I mean? That is also kind of important. I mean, that's really why Ethereum popped. So I think it really just blends like both those worlds and makes everything kind of accessible from like the same kind of like, like concept of like, having like a drop down of different like apps, like an app store or something that, people can pick and choose from to sell their compute to. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And like
kind of cool.
that app store example is like, is that how is your vision for Portal, like where like essentially the app store becomes the wrap store and people can just select who they want to share compute with while earning net at the same time?
Well, yeah, I mean, as I mean, at least like we do have, that in our first sort of cohort of them that are going to be available. I mean, pretty much everyone is going to be available from the moment that they deploy their app through our drop down in Portal.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's something that's coming soon as well. Well, yeah, like very soon. So we're going to be showcasing just like how to do that and how to download all these different apps from like one place. Upcoming AMA. So that's the next
Yeah.
kind of like thing I'm excited about.
Yeah. There's an upcoming AMA, and we'll drop some details at the end of this one about that. We also have a new page on our website to discuss venture studios, which Brian, I wanted to get your take on, to explain what is venture studios, why is it so novel, especially right now in the age of like AI vibe coding, and how does that play into anyone can build a wrap and what we're offering in terms of support?
Yeah, so I would say that all of Web3 has gotten tokenomics wrong, particularly around utility tokens. And so we want to take a hands-on approach for people building on our network and make sure that they're building applications that's down tokenomics. On the other hand, what we have here in reality is a whole new type of Web3 application, right? Like this isn't just smart contracts, this is full stack applications, but it is a new kind of paradigm. And so we think there's a lot of value in being able to help apps understand this new paradigm and assist them in getting started and providing them the capital they need to get started. And so the venture studio model is really the perfect thing for delivering on all of those. It's very cool because, you know, we've just launched it a few weeks ago. We already have people who are applying with some really interesting ideas. So clearly there is an appetite there for it. And I think that there's going to be some really cool innovation out of it.
Yeah, for certain. It's just it's incredible how like in the last few years, you know, you used to need so many engineers or developers if someone had an idea, but today like anyone can create anything. And so the idea of that someone can create a wrap with very little coding experience really opens the floodgates of what's possible to spin up wraps where the users themselves are the infrastructure, are running the compute, and are getting rewarded in the economic value for it. It's an interesting feedback loop that can grow really quickly.
Yeah. Well, one thing to add is like, you know, the cost of coding has now come down so much with AI, right? So what's the remaining big fixed cost? It's cloud, right? Like by hosting a reality, you eliminate that. And so the possibility of what you can build on reality with much less capital is huge. You know, like there's kind of an unbounded possibility space. And so we want to basically take that bull by the horns and enable people to, you know, understand what's possible. Because I think that most people just, when we tell them what you can do on reality, most people are kind of like almost incredulous. And so the venture studio model kind of puts us in the driver's seat for that kind of thing.
Yeah. You know, when we talk about AI, like how should we think about reality in the AI stack? You know, there's a lot of other crypto projects that are maybe have some form of a decentralized compute network. How are we positioned, especially since, you know, it's very clear that AI's biggest bottleneck is compute. And so, you know, the focus on us offering an alternative to like something like AWS for inference. But I was curious, like on your thoughts, Wyatt, in particular, like how does our network open up new types of AI apps that aren't possible today?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the sort of core of what's happening in like the whole AI space is kind of the core of what's been happening in the general tech space, just around like access to like server space. God, that's like a terrible rhyme. Anyway, but yeah, basically like there's a major problem with the way in which individuals get access to the actual servers that they need to run their applications, and like basically people who run a lot of data, you know, or the people who need access to this resource. And yeah, I mean, you know, I honestly think that one might even think about the veracity, like just the possibility of success of an AI company as to whether or not it can like be distributed enough to like run on like smaller devices and not necessarily have to like spend a ton of money with just the sort of, you know, general cloud computing markup that like exists right now, and like how people pay for servers. So yeah, I mean, like the whole kind of, you know, concept here is like whenever you're training like some type of an AI, you're building like a data processing a cluster. It's essentially just like a set of servers. The internet is a series of tubes, but it's just a set of servers that you're processing data through, and performing operations in like massive amounts of like parallel, right? So like if you could basically just like get your users to give you a bunch of like smaller devices or, you know, gaming rigs and shit like that, like a lot of the stuff that's on those computers and just like consumer hardware is a lot better than the bullshit that's inside of those like data centers and everything too. So I mean, like if there was, I mean, yeah, I mean, like I think that this is, really going to be something that's core to making any of these types of models scale, especially like when they need to like move past just like a data center, because, if you want there to be, models that can perform operations inside of like smaller like devices or things, that make decisions and that stuff, you need to have it running on smaller devices, like all about the internet, not just inside of like a data center. So, I mean, that's kind of like it's like everyone's been talking about it. There's a whole season of Silicon Valley that's about this. It's for real. I mean, like it's a known thing, but yeah, it's just kind of cool that it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of also a lot of talk like around training LLMs. Like not all AI is massive, like a GPT-4 or something like that. Inference is at the edge, and most AI usage is inference. It's not training. And so the idea of like so the example would be like instead of one person reading 1,000-page book, which would be like an LLM, you can give one page to 1,000 people, and the distributed compute and the processing of it, can really distribute the cost and the latency also, just like to get all this data together through our network would be it's sort of like what we are building is this global human machine validation layer where the compute can be decentralized and distributed, right? And CPUs can verify execution and check results and so forth. And it sort of like I see it also as like a place in the AI stack that's more like the long tail, where it's not necessarily where the GPUs are hanging out, but there's a lot of utility there for it.
Yeah, even in terms of like the concept of inference, like you can still train neural networks. I mean, you can parallelize them across servers. That's still a thing that can be reality net. And using it in tandem with something like TensorFlow or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, just in general, like I think right now what everybody's noticing, especially with just kind of the whole like AI scare about it taking over stuff, is that like if you're thinking about this stuff is really just becoming like, almost kind of like a resource per se that, people are like tapping into and whatnot. Like you think about it as like something that like grows on like server space, so, like the amount of electricity and money that you pump into these different things. So if you can create like a business model that doesn't necessarily have a like cash-based dependence, like vendor lock-in on like some giant like thing that's like not even really like, really the best way to be doing stuff. I think that these types of businesses will actually like succeed and have an advantage. So in a space where it's like maybe like, you don't have $100 million, but you have like, some kind of like an AI idea, like you can basically like get the servers that you need through like reality and like just through a community of people and paying them in like some kind of a token based representation of like all of the compute that they've contributed into this like applications, like whatever makes it worth its while, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's really cool and you can do that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit about the big picture here. Wyatt, what has been the hardest problem you had to solve this year?
Um, I could take this in a lot of different directions. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, we're wrapping up, something that's really been in the works for quite some time. And, in a lot of ways, just sort of like corralling a bunch of shit that sort of existed in its own sort of like separate areas into one place, and then making everything kind of like available through like the kind of grand hurrah of it all, I'd say. Um, so yeah, I mean, we're basically just, launching kind of like the final form of like what it's gonna be to use us, and honestly, putting those pieces together, I think has really just because I mean, it spanned years. There's a lot of shit that I'd written like years ago, and I had to sort of like bring all of this stuff together, and it was
Yeah.
that was quite a while. I mean, lots of things changed. The version of the programming language that we used changed quite significantly. So,
Yeah.
you
Wow.
it's wild.
Yeah,
Looking
yeah.
back, it's good. Thing.
Yeah, it's been years in the making. It's like putting it all together. I also, in the last few months, Brian has been in Prospera, which is a unique place, which has its own economic advantages. and he spent actually a few months there. So just wanted to ask you, Brian, if what's been going on there for Reality and Prospera?
Yeah, why was down as well. And we had a great time. Yeah.
Brian
No,
was like,
I was locked in down in Prospera. Christine is
Yeah.
here actually from Prospera. She's a wonderful representative. Thanks for being here, Christine. She runs the whole show over in Duna. So what to say about Prospera? I think like there's some stuff we don't want to say yet. However, I'll just lay out like what our thought process is here. And what this is, you know, just kind of the consensus amongst our team. We are in late stage crypto. Like most people are totally jaded by crypto at this point. And I don't blame them. You know, like the industry is a kind of mess at this point, and it's a lot of there's Christine. Yeah, Christine lives in Prospera 9 months out of the year, and reach out to her if you have any questions about Prospera. She's great. Basically, the industry is a shit show. Everybody thinks that crypto is just filled with scammers and fake projects. And so the question for us is like, well, how do we make Reality a success at this stage of the game? And I think for us, like, we want to do justice to Wyatt's technology, right? I have followed Wyatt's tech like since way back when. I know it's special. So the question is, what's going to give us the best shot at doing justice to this in this climate, in this environment? Logical place to go is the world's most advanced network state, right? And that is Prospera. Prospera is like a crypto-enabled jurisdiction. It is, I don't know if you've read Balaji Srinivasan's book about the network state. Prospera is a very unique place because it is an autonomous zone of Honduras with constitutional protections, which means that it doesn't just exist at the behest of the government like so many other autonomous zones. It actually is its own country. And it has really interesting systems of governance. It actually presents itself as providing governance as a service, right? So in lieu of other jurisdictions where you go there and you're just forced to abide by the rules, you have to deal with all the bureaucracy, all the expense, all of the friction. Prospera actually allows you to choose what laws you want to operate your business under. And it's hyper efficient and cheap. It's easy to set up entities. You can do a lot of stuff remotely. It attracts incredible talent. The people I met there are just phenomenal. They're all doing amazing stuff. A lot of biotech there. A lot of people who are really like pushing the envelope in their own fields of expertise. They just surpassed 500 entities that have been created in Prospera. They have huge investors there, including like Sam Altman, the Winklevoss twins from Facebook. They have Andreessen Horowitz. We've got Peter Thiel. So why do we go to Prospera? Number one, it is the logical place for someone like us, Reality Network, which is the real deal, to go to a place that is the real deal and that is committed to blockchain technology, committed to innovation, and where it's a good place to do business. And also because the people who invest in Prospera, right, are going to be interested in what we're doing there, right? What Reality is doing now, what we're aiming to do, is not just something for Reality, but something for Prospera. And I think what I can say about what we're doing is that we have engaged the regulators. We are discussing new crypto regulations, and they've been very receptive. They've been very easy to deal with. And, you know, we have something cooking, and it's going to be something that differentiates our token launch from every other token launch out there and differentiates us on a permanent basis, right? So I think that's what I can say. That's that part.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, and there's so much philosophical alignment with our values around permissionlessness and freedom and openness, and to instead of being in murky waters in any like nation state jurisdiction where we're at the behest of politicians and regulators and don't even understand the space. We're able to move quicker, and we are really aligned there. So excited. We've got some exciting things cooking, and we will announce them in due time. All right. I also would like to, by the way, if anyone has any questions, you can just drop them in the chat. We have our first cohort of wraps coming out, and in that is Cyberlead and Sentiment. And we have some announcements there, but we're gonna co-announce with them on an AMA, and that will happen on May. And could you, Brian or Wyatt, speak to what is the goal? What do we see like coming out on testnet with Sentiment and Cyberlead, and as we go into the next few months?
Well, we have one goal we haven't told anybody about, which is really great. So we will share that with you probably on like the latter of those two AMAs. Yeah, I mean, we're just getting apps on the network and publicly available through the portal for people to download and sort of get involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on to it. Yeah.
Brian, what do you wish more people in the community understood about what we're building?
That it's really, really useful, and that cloud costs are the biggest structural inefficiency in the entire tech industry. And software eats the world, the tech industry is eating the world, and we're addressing the biggest inefficiency in the tech industry.
Hell yeah.
So it's like the whole point of technology is to make things more efficient, and we're in some kind of local minima of like inefficiency, or like an uncanny valley of our technological evolution, where we are being extorted by cloud companies, and it is not just like, it's preventing lots of useful stuff from being built. Right? It's not just that like they clearly have killed a bunch of companies through extorting them through the cloud builds, but they've actually killed a lot of otherwise useful companies from forming and existing. When you bring down the barriers to entry by reducing cloud costs, you actually enable more risk to be taken, more innovation to happen, things that are not necessarily to the liking of the people who control all the capital and compute, right? That's what's really important, that you can start to take risks and you can do things that maybe ruffle some feathers. That's a good thing too. So that's, I think, the biggest thing. Like we're literally focused on the biggest inhibitor of, I think, human evolution. Like on a socio-political, socioeconomic sense.
Wow, nailed it. All right, before we go, I just want everyone to know that we really appreciate your support in mining on our testnet. It helps us work out all the kinks as we get ready for our mainnet launch. And also, I have developed this GPT called Reality Oracle. I just dropped the link in the chat again, and it gets updated, I'd say, about every week or so with new information. So if you ever have questions about how reality works in relation to anything, whether you're a consensus expert or you're just someone who's getting into crypto, if you'd like to like understand reality from any vantage point, ask it questions, and love to get your feedback on it, because a lot of work and time goes into it, as reality can at times be challenging to explain because the language in the world is not out there yet. The example I give is like, if it was 1997 and you had to explain what the power of the internet was in the next 20 years, you would be using words people wouldn't understand at that time. So we are at the cutting edge of what is possible to do in a peer-to-peer global network. And yeah, it's just like, think of it as sort of like a library or glossary or encyclopedia that continuously gets updated as we go. And we certainly appreciate your support. We would love to hear more from you guys on socials and get the word out about reality, getting more node runners. If anyone has questions wants to build a wrap, we're always here and to help and support and direct. Is there any final words or anything else you'd like to say, Wyatt or Brian?
Right.
I was just going to say, please open, we're going to restart the testnet. Please open these other ports so that we can start like spinning up Lib P2P to a greater extent. I'm going to provide a new version of the Android app. So like just put it onto your Androids and give it a shot. And yeah, just thank you so much for your ongoing support, everyone. You know, we're working hard, and we're gonna, you know, with your help, we'll deliver something special.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right, guys.
thanks again, guys. Oh, sorry, never mind. I was going to say really quick, but thank you guys again. And also, if you guys open up that port, by the way, then we have a bunch. It'll make it a lot easier to join the phone notes, so people can put like money on their Excel servers just to get it across. Help us out. Great.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining. All the best.
Thanks, guys. Bye.